Welcome to Shutter and Flow, a podcast for commercial photographers looking to grow their business, stay creative, and keep up with industry trends. I'm Edward Antonelli, and with me is my co host, Jeremy Freeman. Today, we are going to be talking about bids, budgets, and invoicing. Whether you need to bid on a project to win work or set day rates, this can always be tricky to navigate. Jeremy, you have a lot of experience in bidding for work. Let's start with, how do you determine whether a project is even worth bidding on? And have you ever decided not to bid on something?
Yes. It definitely happens because I kind of look at it this way. You want to shoot a certain thing in your career. You want to be this type of photographer, do this type of shoots. So your goal should be to make everything that. So if there's an opportunity to do something like that, whatever it may be, portraits, entertainment, things, and another shoot is they ask you to bid on one, but it may not be in that world, but you're holding out on that. So there's a luxury of, do you have enough work that you can say no to some things? Does your situation allow that? Or is it something that you just decided you're not doing anymore? I think by doing a lot of different types of photography, you learn, oh, this isn't what I enjoy. I personally, we've talked about this before. I will not shoot a wedding anymore. I think it's great. I think people that do it that are great. It's just not what I prefer to do. I like my weekends. I think, yes, you have to be able to say no to certain things if it furthers your overall North Star of your photography career.
And overbidding something kind of falls into this as well, right? If there's a project that you don't feel like is in your wheelhouse or what you're trying to do, there's always the option to overbid it and see if they go for it. And if they do, you take it, but at least then you're getting paid way more money. And so it seems like a better project to take. I think you've done that once or twice.
That has definitely happened where it's like, hey, I don't really want to do this or be gone for this long or do whatever it is I have, but you throw a big number out. And if sometimes someone says yes, you're like, all right, that sounds like a good idea. I would love to do that now. As long as it's worth your time. And then you have to be able to switch your mindset. And at that moment, the moment you agree to do something, you have to be all in and say, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to elevate it in my own way and make it that much better.
Let's say you get an actual project that you do want to bid on, or you're bidding on something. What are the key things that you consider when you're actually placing your bid?
I always try to talk with the client, be it the agency or the brand or whoever it is, and just have an honest conversation about budget. Don't be afraid to just ask that question. Hey, what kind of budget are you working with? Because I feel like so many people get tiptoe around the money and how much it is and your day rate, and because then you have to think about things like day rate versus usage fee, assistance, travel. There's all these tiny little things, and the more you do this, the more you learn that you have to make sure to think about simple things like, oh, hard drives for delivery. How is it going to be delivered? All these little things it seems like not a lot, but if you forget to add that in, you're losing money because you have to buy a hard drive to deliver the thing most of the time.
When you're breaking down a bid, do you tend to start with crew first? And like, what do you start with? Like, walk me through, like, these are the most important things, and then the things on the back end that you can try to add later to kind of fluff it up or make sure that you don't lose any money on the shoot.
Yeah, I think crew is definitely like, are you going to have a crew? Like, I have shoots sometimes where it's just me, and then I have shoots sometimes where it's two assistants, a digital tech, a PA, stylist, makeup artist. It can keep adding and adding, and that can make a budget go up significantly. And then models are also, that's a whole other world. We'll talk about that. Adding models for a commercial shoot can get very expensive, way more than you'd ever imagine. We'll do a whole other episode on that. But we can bring a friend in that does that for a living, that like works at an agency that does modeling, and we have them talk about what the pricing really should be. But then there's your day rate. And in the old model, it used to be you would get your day rate for shooting, and then there would be a usage fee. And it's like, okay, in the end, they want 10 images, just say that they're going to use those for 10 years and they're going to be on a billboard. And they would remember our old photography book where it was like, this is the one accounting class we had or business class we had in school.
Yeah.
And you'd open it and it'd be like, all right, you're shooting for a national brand and they want a billboard in this image and you should charge this much. It was so dated and useless at that time, even.
Yeah.
And now I think it's become less and less of that. Most of the time now, because things are going so many different places, an image can be shot and used for billboards, social, banner ads on websites, everything you can think of. So companies, a lot less now, companies are saying, we'll pay you for usage. It's more of like, we want to be able to use these images, the selects or whatever it is, in any source, in any way. So you add that into your budget. You do your day rate, and then separately you do usage rights, but it is just like a lump sum that is like, you guys get to use these images for whatever. They don't own the images. That does happen occasionally that people want to buy them out, and that's a different negotiation and can get more expensive because you want to be able to own your own images. But I think it's less of a model to say, oh, you can use these images for a year or 3 years, and then they have to come back to you to ask to use them again if they want to for a little bit more money. And I just see it's more beneficial because how quick things move and change now to just be like, great, it'll be a little bit more money on the front end, but you don't worry about that back end later on.
And you see clients that you've been dealing with, mainly on the agency side, they're going for that strategy when you're actually saying, okay, here's my bid for this, and in terms of like, it's not a full buyout, but in terms of like the licensing agreement, there's just a little bit larger amount up front instead of dealing with all the intricacies of like how much they're licensing and for what time and how much, and they seem to like that.
It's just kind of a standard now. It's not even like a discussion. It is more just like, great, we'll use the selects for this long and whatever. Because I think about things like we just worked on it together, that Aflac commercial. Realistically, those images that we shot that are specific to a commercial and this season of basketball and it's certain coaches and whatever, it's only going to get used for that 1 year. Like, it's very unlikely that they're going to use those same images. They could use parts of it potentially, but it's like they're not going to use that same image for the next couple of years because they have different talent and different sponsors for other things. So it all changes so quick.
It's like anything. There's going to be turnover. Nobody's going to use the same imagery for 5 years or 3 years or even 2. And nowadays, some people don't want to use the same imagery in 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, even if you think about technology changes, say you shoot something and someone's holding an iPhone or someone's holding a whatever device it may be, it really quickly you could be like, oh, that's like 3 years old because that's the old generation and it looks different. So I think it's just less of a theme to do that now. It does still happen occasionally, but rarely.
How do you handle the negotiation if a client pushes back on your initial bid?
I personally go into all of these, like if I talk to someone, know roughly what their budget is, and if I'm pushing them beyond that a little bit, when you send it, be like, hey, I know you're looking here. I try to be as open about it as possible. If I know that they're roughly in a budget area and mine goes a little above that, I'm at least justifying it. Be like, hey, I want to make sure we have the right crew. I want to make sure that we have the makeup artist and the stylist is going to, you have to go into it saying, this is going to make the product better. The retouching on the back end. If we have all of that locked in ahead of time before you shoot anything, and that's what you have to do is just say, you're doing this extra. It's going to cost a little extra so we can get a better product on the back end and less work. Most of the time that works. Occasionally you just have to find little things to cut back down if you really want the job. I mean, and look, most of us want the job. Let's face it. We like creating the thing as photographers. Um, but then you can find little things like maybe your budget, your like my day rate might come down just a little bit to make that match. Or maybe you go with one assistant instead of two, and it would be nice to have two assistants. But maybe that day, okay, you plan ahead a little bit and I help a little extra than I would normally to set up the lights and load in the gear. Um, so there's a
Yeah.
few little ways to maneuver it around. Or like I said earlier about, oh, hard drives. If the client or the agency is like, well, we'll provide the hard drive so you don't have to add that. Okay, that saves a little money in the budget. Just take that out of there and they'll bring them in from their office.
Yeah.
So you can always find little things to adjust if you need to. But it's just always best when you're building it out at the beginning to think of every little thing that could go in there. And even thinking about like overtime. Most crews work on a 10-hour day. If you look at this shoot and we're scheduling it out and there's a bunch of people to photograph or whatever it may be, and you're like, this may go long, you have to factor that into your estimate and say, if for every hour we go over, it's going to be this much extra to keep the crew on. And
Yeah.
so that would be all your extra crew. You just go in there and figure out time and a half and multiply that. And you can do it by an hour and figure out how much it's going to be.
Yeah. So let's say you bid on a project and the bid's actually accepted and things are going ahead. How do you set up the budget for the project ahead of time so that you make sure you're budgeting things appropriately?
You just have to ahead of time double check your cost on everything. Like when you're building your budget, say you're using a studio, say you're getting your gear from there. Really make your most, like, get the exact cost of every single thing and have it really detailed out. Make sure your crew is, because photo assistants and digital techs, some people's rates vary slightly um, depending on their abilities. So you just have to make sure you have it overly detailed every step of the way so it doesn't bite you in the ass on the back end. And look, also, maybe on the gear, you're not 100% sure if it's far enough out what all you're going to need. Overestimate that gear budget by $500. Just if there's sometimes you get on set and you're like, oh, wait, we need this. And if you're at a studio, you can just be like, oh, we get this added on to it? And they can. But you have to kind of think about all those little things that could bite you in the ass.
Do you keep a list or spreadsheets for yourself when you're working on adding a bid, or do you just look at previous ones you've done before?
I have a Google Doc that is loaded with a bunch of different rates for different things.
Mm-hmm.
So assistant rates, studios that are here local that I have used before, certain gear roughly, depending on, but like if you're traveling, it varies per city. So yeah, you just keep a running list of all those little things and so you know what to work off of.
Yeah. So what is because you know a lot of other photographers and you guys talk adding in bids for projects or bidding on things. What is the biggest mistake you've seen people make?
Underestimating how much time it's actually going to take you. Specifically when I see people who like the back end. No one thinks about the back end of how much the editing or when people try to say, oh, I'll just retouch it myself. It's like, yeah, great. That's going to take, if that's not what you do for a living, it's going to take you so much time to get this stuff done. And then you're missing out on reaching out and networking with other clients.
Yeah.
So it's like your time is the most important thing. And if people don't plan that out properly, they're losing money by wasting time because they didn't put it into their whole budget.
Yeah. Well, so once a project is wrapped up, what's your invoicing process look like?
So I'm actually just, it's funny, just before I came back here to record, my wife and I were working on, there's a software called Honeybook, and it is a invoicing software. Because we were like, all right, this year we got to change it a little bit because I was just doing it on my own and keeping track of it. But I was like, we need it to be more concise and more to the point. So we are setting that up right now, and I'm sending an invoice out this afternoon to do that and just be so it's all saved in one spot.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, it's important to make sure for business purposes how you're set up, LLC, S corp, all those things, and just make sure that you're buttoned down on all of that, and then it goes to your business so it doesn't affect if something goes wrong the rest of your life. You don't No one can sue you for anything else and take your home because you have it set up as a business.
Right, right. So when you're sending invoices to clients, are you doing anything like a net 30, net 60, overages, late fees, anything like that? Or are you just sending the invoice and hoping the client pays it on time?
I am very lucky that I have only had one client ever really have an issue with this. And then it turns out it was partially my fault. So it was one of those that I don't right now. I probably should have that. Most of the time, the net 30 or whatever the timing is at my experience has been more the client kind of
Yeah.
has a policy for that. If you work with a big enough company, be it a big network or brand or a big agency, they have like a set policy already in place. So that is something that you should talk about ahead of time. There
Yeah.
are opportunities where you could, once the budget is approved and you want to if you have to rent gear and get all this stuff ahead of time, you can put it into your budget and negotiate to get half up front or a percentage up front before you do the shoot if you need it for certain things. I have definitely done that on some bigger shoots, but for the most part, I would say it has turned into net 30 as a very common thing you see
Yeah. And I
everywhere.
imagine the larger the company, at least in my experience, the larger the company, the slower things move, right? So
Yes.
typically the larger and the older sometimes that a company has been around, things just tend to move really slowly, and you're gonna be lucky if you get paid inside of 2 months from when a project is complete. But you can rest assured with those larger, more established companies that you will get paid. It just might take a little longer. So I think your idea and what you do of the larger the shoot, ask for some money up front so that you could at least cover your assistants and your digitech and any rentals that you have to do, so that that's not coming out of pocket. And then if you're doing multiple big shoots in a month and you're not recouping some amount of that up front, you're basically going to come a lot of money out of your pocket for that 1 month or two that you get a lot of shoots.
Yeah, because personally, I like to, most of my photo assistants are digital techs that I work with are friends of mine. They're people that I like to hang out with, and they're people that I trust. So I want to show that also where it's like, hey, I'm going to pay you quicker than I'm getting paid normally if I can. So then that way if I call them, they'll also like, yeah, of course we're going to come work for you because we know you pay us quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you send out any formal contracts before invoicing? Like, are you doing a contract when you set your bid, when, especially for these larger shoots?
Yeah, my standard estimate that I've been sending out has most of the legal language in it. Um, More often than not, there is a contract that comes from an agency before the shoot that has everything in it as well. So it's like covered on both ends. Um, that's I was also on my list of things to do. I was listening to a podcast. I don't even remember what it was, but Simon Sinek actually. And they were talking about that for some reason. And I was like, I need a more precise contract.
Yeah.
That's what I need to work on for myself.
And it's going to change between brands and agencies, right? Like a big agency shoot, they're having a producer work on it. You're likely going to get a contract from them to sign before the shoot. Uh, but if it's a brand, especially a small brand, it might be worthwhile having a simple contract, statement of work, something like that, that you can maybe get them to sign. It depends on the relationship, and it also depends on how big the company is, right? What your relationship is with the company, but it is something worth having in your back pocket.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, something very important on the contracts is making sure all the little things are in there, like really define the deliverables and how they're going to be delivered, overly explain these things. If there's retouching included in it, say how many rounds of revisions they get. Don't because those are the type of things that if you don't put that in there, it's going to continue to go forever.
Yeah.
So all those things is so important to ahead of time really lock down exactly what needs to happen on the back end, because otherwise the shoot that's like, oh, this will be 3 days and we'll be done with it, can continue on for months and months when it should have been over already.
Yeah. And that's just going to take away from whatever your next project is or next shoot is going to be. And it's also just going to eat into your time and sanity a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. So we started touching on brands and agencies. I think that'll be our next episode. We're going to kind of dive into the differences between working with brands versus agencies and a little bit of experience that Jeremy and I both have working with those. So thanks for listening.
And if you found this conversation helpful, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening now. We've got more episodes coming your way, and we're excited to keep diving into the business of commercial photography.